He thought the wolves were the worst thing lurking in the snow, until he saved a bleeding woman and woke up with 12 rifles pointed at his cabin door. The sun was folding itself into the shoulders of the pines when he spotted the first track. Elk, he guessed, but the gait was off. Lighter. Scattered. Something had spooked it. The hunter crouched, brushing his fingers through the crushed snow. A trace of blood clung to the frozen ground. Not elk. Not fresh. His eyes narrowed as the wind shifted. Behind him, the forest creaked like tired bones. The pines stood tall, unmoving, but he knew better. The woods whispered when they wanted something. He rose, cradling the old rifle in his arm. It wasn't his by right, nothing he owned truly was, but it had weight, memory, and a notch in the stock for every time it had refused to let him die. His coat smelled of pine pitch and ash. His boots were patched with twine. He looked like someone time forgot. The woods ahead darkened, shadows slipping down the trunks like molasses. The last of the sun hid his face, sharp and amber, before it sank entirely and left him alone with the cold. That's when he heard the first howl. It came low from the west, maybe half a mile out. A second answered eastward. Then a third, closer, circling. His fingers tightened around the stock, but he didn't run. Wolves didn't usually hunt this close to the valley this time of year. Not unless hunger drove them past instinct. He moved carefully, picking his path between the brush, stepping only where his eyes had measured. His breath puffed before him like smoke signals. The howling stopped. Then came the scream. It wasn't human. Not fully. There was too much silence threaded into it, like whoever had screamed had learned, long ago, to do it without hope. He ran. Each footfall cracked ice, snapped branches, and broke a quiet he'd never dared disturb before. The scream came again, shorter, cut off. Then, nothing. Just the sound of his own blood in his ears and the wind scraping the trees. The clearing opened before him like a wound. She lay at its center. A woman, barefoot, blood on her arms, her dress torn, frayed at the hem and black with dirt. Her hair spilled around her head like ink. And surrounding her, 4 wolves. They moved like fog, quiet and sure. One step closer, jaws low. Her eyes were closed. He didn't speak, just raised the rifle. The crack of the shot shattered the clearing. One wolf yelped, staggered back, its flank grazed. The others turned, startled, their eyes catching the light. For a heartbeat, the forest held its breath. Then they scattered, silent again, vanishing into the trees. Smoke curled from the muzzle as he approached, slowly. The woman did not move. Her breathing was shallow. But there, a gash along her ribs bled steady. He crouched beside her, uncertain. He'd seen death before. This wasn't it. Not yet. She stirred as he lifted her. Light, like lifting kindling. But her warmth was leaving. Her skin was cold against his coat. She smelled of sweat and ash. He didn't ask why she was here. The question could wait. The path back was longer with her in his arms. The forest didn't speak again, but it watched. His cabin stood where the trees thinned, half built by his own hands, half salvaged from what was left by others. Smoke from the fire curled through the roof hole. Inside, warmth and flickering shadows. He laid her on the bed, stoked the coals, and cleaned the blood as best he could with boiled linen and shaking fingers. She didn't speak, but her eyes opened once, black as coal, rimmed with firelight, and locked on his. He didn't look away. Later, as snow began to fall, she slept. He sat at the table, fingers ink-stained, drawing the curve of her necklace in the margin of his journal. It was made of obsidian beads and a single crow feather. He didn't touch it, didn't ask, just drew, quietly, as though understanding its shape might teach him something about her. Outside, somewhere in the trees, a lone wolf howled again. This time, it was closer. He didn't sleep. The next morning, frost clung to the window panes like ghosts. He stepped outside with his rifle slung low and eyes sweeping the tree-line. The wind was still. Too still. That's when he saw it. A single set of boot prints. Not hers, not his, just past the clearing. Deep. Heavy. Leading toward the cabin. Then away. He followed them for 10 yards before they vanished into the snow. No pattern, no trace of where they'd come from. Just one boot print, with the faintest trace of blood in the heel. He turned back toward the cabin, heart thudding. Inside, she was awake. She sat upright on the edge of the bed, her face pale, eyes alert. She didn't flinch when he entered. Didn't speak either. Just studied him like she was deciding what kind of man he was. He broke the silence first. You were being hunted. She nodded, slow. By more than wolves. She looked toward the door, then back at him, and spoke just once. You shouldn't have brought me here. Her voice was low, raw, but firm. I couldn't leave you to die, he said, quieter than he meant to. She didn't thank him. Just turned her gaze back to the fire. Outside, a raven perched on the chimney and cawed 3 times. The snow kept falling. She didn't speak for 2 days. She sat by the fire, wrapped in the thickest quilt he owned, her hair falling in dark ropes across her face. When she moved, it was slow, deliberate, like every motion had to pass through pain first. He cooked in silence, stirred beans in an iron pot, cut strips of venison with his belt knife. She watched him the way a hawk watches a prairie mouse, not cruel, just calculating. He didn't ask where she was from. He didn't ask what happened. But the questions curled in the back of his throat like wood smoke. She slept most of the day, waking only to drink water and eat the food he left on the table. She never touched it while he was nearby. He'd go outside, split logs, clean traps, let the stillness have its say. When he returned, the plate would be empty, the bowl licked clean, and she'd be staring at the flames again, blinking slow. On the 3rd morning, she spoke. You write things. He looked up from the table, where his journal lay open. He'd been sketching a ridge he once saw at sunset, jagged, orange, blood-tipped. Her voice was dry, like someone remembering how to use it. Sometimes, he said. She nodded toward the open page. That mountain don't look real. It was. Long time ago. She stood, winced slightly, and crossed the cabin. For the first time, she looked at the pages, not like someone admiring art, but like someone reading a map. Her finger hovered over the page, then stopped. You draw like someone who lost things, she said. He blinked. Maybe I did. You still looking? He didn't answer. Just closed the book and tied it shut with its frayed cord. She returned to her place by the fire, dragging the quilt with her like a shield. Her eyes never left him again that day. That night, as the wind picked up and hissed through the cracks in the shutters, she turned toward him again. You got a name? He hesitated. Not because he didn't have one, but because it hadn't mattered in so long. He wasn't sure it still fit. I used to. She didn't push. Just nodded, like that made sense. A log in the fire cracked open, spilling sparks. The light flickered across her face, cheekbones sharp, mouth tight. Her skin was darker than his, wind-chapped, marked faintly by what might have been ceremonial paint, now mostly washed away. Around her neck, the obsidian necklace still hung. He noticed she touched it when she was thinking, or praying, or maybe both. Why'd you help me? She asked suddenly. He looked at her, then away. Wolves don't get to decide who dies out there. Neither do men. He poured himself a cup of boiled coffee, black as pitch, bitter as regret. Maybe not, he said. But sometimes they pretend they can. She didn't respond. But she looked at him differently after that. Like he'd passed some kind of test. That evening, as the sun dipped low and set fire to the sky, he found her outside, barefoot in the snow, standing still as stone. Her breath curled in front of her like spirit smoke. Her eyes were on the trees. They followed me, she said, without turning. Not just the wolves. Others. He stepped out onto the porch. Men. She nodded. Hunters. Soldiers. Settlers. I don't know what they call themselves, but I know what they want. He waited. They want blood. Doesn't matter whose. Just someone brown. Someone old. Someone they can say started it. You didn't. She turned to him, eyes steady. Does it matter? It should have. But it didn't. That night, the air grew sharp with frost. The stars above were cold needles, watching. Inside, she asked for a strip of cloth, then began weaving something near the fire. Her fingers moved quick, practiced. He didn't ask what it was. I had a brother once, she said, eyes on the thread. He carved animals from pine. Said they kept spirits happy. What happened to him? She tied the cloth off and didn't answer. But her hand trembled once, before she tucked the bundle into her coat. He offered her his bed again that night. She shook her head. Not until I can walk without bleeding. He respected that. Respected her silence. Some wounds weren't ready for softness. He sat awake long after she slept, sharpening his knife by the fire, the scrape of metal against stone like a lullaby for the restless. At some point near dawn, something woke him. Not sound, not motion, just presence. He rose slowly and stepped to the door. Open it just enough to see the world beyond. There, beyond the edge of firelight, a man stood. Alone. Wide-brimmed hat. Long coat. A rifle slung over one shoulder. No horse. No pack. Just standing there, in the snow, watching. The hunter said nothing. Just stared back. The man lifted a hand, not in greeting. Just a single finger pointed toward the cabin. Then he turned and walked into the trees. Gone. When the hunter turned, she was already awake. He's here, she said. You know him? Not by name. But I've seen the way his people kill. He didn't ask why the man hadn't shot. Or why he'd come alone. The forest didn't give answers easy, and neither did she. Instead, he poured water into the kettle, set it to boil, and said, We'll leave at first light. She shook her head. Won't matter. They'll be back. And next time, they won't come one at a time. His eyes flicked to the rifle leaning against the door. They'll expect us to run. She looked at him like she already knew the thought that followed. So we don't, he said. She didn't smile. But something softened in her jaw. A kind of grim respect. In the firelight, the kettle began to sing. The morning came heavy with silence, the kind that presses against the skin and sinks deep into the marrow. Frost crusted the eaves of the cabin, and the snow had stopped falling, but the air held its breath like something sacred was about to break. They were already there. 12 men, mounted and spread across the ridge just beyond the clearing. Their horses snorted plumes of breath into the cold. Rifles across their laps. Eyes like stone. He stood in the doorway, boots planted firm, rifle cradled against his chest, but not raised. Not yet. She stood behind him in the shadow of the cabin, half hidden, her hand resting gently on the frame. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes were sharp, focused. She'd braided her hair back, tied it with a strip of leather. She was no longer someone being saved. She was someone preparing. The lead rider stepped forward. He was older than the rest, maybe 40, maybe 50, but wore his age like armor. One side of his mustache had frost clinging to it, and his badge gleamed dully on his coat. He didn't bother introducing himself. You've got something that doesn't belong to you. The hunter didn't blink. She was dying in the snow. I brought her here. That's all. She's a murderer. The man's voice was flat. She was seen near Lawson's homestead 3 days before burned. Took a settler boy's ear off with a flint blade. That makes her yours now. She was running from wolves. The man spat into the snow. Ain't no wolves in these parts brave enough to circle that close to fire, except the kind that walks on 2 legs. The hunter glanced at her. She didn't flinch, didn't speak, just stared at the men like she was watching a story she'd heard too many times. You got 5 minutes to bring her out, the man said. Or we come in. The riders didn't shout. They didn't wave rifles or beat chests. This wasn't a warning. It was an expiration notice. The hunter stepped back inside and shut the door. She could leave now, he said quietly, not looking at her. There's a path through the canyon north of here. If you move quick. No. He turned. If they come. They will. Then we fight. She met his gaze. We stay. He nodded once. Not because he agreed, but because something in him knew there was no longer a choice. They spent the day in motion. Quiet, precise. He checked the traps he'd laid when he first settled the land. Wires under snow, stakes behind trees, flint triggers. He set trip lines with cowbells near the back slope and hammered a nail through each shutter's frame, so they couldn't be forced open from the outside. She prepared as well, sorted his tools, wrapped cloth around broken glass, poured oil into empty liquor bottles, and tucked them by the fire. Not a single word passed between them as they worked. When night came, they lit no lamps. The cabin glowed only from the hearth. The wind had picked up again, swirling snow past the windows in slow, choking spirals. Every creak of the roof, every groan of the timber, sounded like a step outside. They sat at the table across from each other, the journal lying open between them. She flipped to the drawing he'd made, her necklace. She touched the feather. "That boy," she said finally, "the one they said I gutted. He was still breathing when I ran." He said nothing. "My brother set the fire. Said if they could take our land, we could take their sleep. I didn't agree. I tried to stop him." He watched her closely. "Did you?" She didn't look up. Too late. He leaned forward, hands on the wood. "They're not here for truth. They're here for peace of mind. A scapegoat. A show." "I know. Then why not run?" Her hand curled around the edge of the journal. "Because every time we run, we forget who we are. And the land forgets us too." He didn't press further. He understood now. Not all things needed saving. Some needed standing beside. At some point in the dark, the first bottle hit. It exploded against the side of the cabin, flame licking across the outer wall like a serpent. He leapt for the bucket near the door, doused it in snow, and smothered the fire before it could breathe. Another crash followed. Then a third. Smoke seeped through the cracks. She was already crouched near the shutter, peeking through the slats. "They're testing. Seeing how fast we move. How scared we look." He loaded shells into his rifle, slow, deliberate. "Let's not give them either." Gunfire cracked through the trees. A bullet punched through the front door and buried itself in the far wall. Another tore through the shutter, grazing her shoulder. She barely flinched. Her blood darkened the sleeve. He grabbed her arm, pressed a cloth to the wound. "That's deep." "I've had worse," she said. "Get ready." They moved like dancers, every step rehearsed. He took the front. She took the back, where the slope dipped into the treeline. They traded places twice, watching for movement, listening for footfalls. Then came the first mistake. One of the men crept too close to the trip line by the barn. The cowbell rang. The hunter was already out the back, rifle raised. One shot. The figure dropped. No scream. Just a heavy thud in the snow. They waited. Nothing. A long silence stretched between the trees, as though even the wind refused to speak. Then a voice echoed from the ridge. "We'll burn you out, just like you burned that boy." Neither of them moved. Inside, the fire in the hearth burned low. She sat against the wall, clutching her shoulder, her breath coming faster now. He sat beside her, rifle across his knees. "They won't stop," he said. "No." He turned to her. "But maybe they'll bleed." She looked at him with something like pride. Or grief. Or both. The cabin walls groaned again as the wind shifted. Snow piled against the door. The smell of smoke lingered. Outside, wolves howled. Closer this time. Not just one. She leaned her head back against the logs. "They're watching," she whispered. "The wolves. The spirits. All of them." He nodded slowly. "Let them watch." And outside, hidden behind the trees, 12 men waited for dawn. Dawn came slow and red, bleeding into the snow like an old wound reopening. Smoke still clung to the trees, low and bitter, and the scent of scorched pine lingered inside the cabin's timbers. He had not slept. Neither had she. They sat side by side beneath the window, their bodies stiff from cold and stillness, rifles across their laps like old truths too long avoided. Her bandaged shoulder leaked a faint bloom of red. His hand trembled as he rechecked the bullets. Not from fear, his kind of fear had long turned to ash, but from a knowing. Knowing this was the kind of day a man doesn't walk away from whole. Footsteps crunched outside. A single set. He looked to her. She gave a slow nod. He stood, stepped into the light, and opened the door. The man with the badge was waiting alone, hat pulled low, coat stiff with frost. His rifle remained slung, but there was something final in the way he stood. "Thought I'd give you a chance to do the right thing," he said. The hunter stepped onto the porch. Right for who? For the boy who burned. She didn't do it. The man's mouth twitched, just slightly. She didn't stop it. He said nothing. The man's eyes darkened. You think one brown girl's worth 12 white graves? Think your little stand here means anything when the snow melts and no one remembers your names? Behind him, the pines stood still, watching. I'm not here for memory, the hunter said. I'm here for her. The man gave a quiet laugh. You picked the wrong side. I picked the one that didn't lie to me. Silence stretched long enough to cut. The man stepped back. Then you stay with her. Die with her. He whistled once. The trees responded. Figures moved among the shadows. Boots, coats, gunmetal. 11 men in slow formation, their rifles ready, jaws clenched. The hunter stepped inside and shut the door. They're coming, he said. She rose without hesitation, tied her hair tighter. He handed her the second rifle. Their eyes met, and in that brief stillness, something passed between them. Not love, not exactly, but the shape of it. Something deeper. Chosen. They moved into position. She crouched behind the shutter with a bottle in hand. He leaned by the doorframe, counting the steps outside. The first shot came like thunder, splintered wood, shattered air. Then chaos. He returned fire, sharp and clean, dropping a shadow near the well. She lit the rag of the bottle, kissed her fingers, and tossed it. Fire bloomed in the snow. Men screamed and stumbled back. Gunfire answered from the ridge. He ducked, breath held, as bullets chewed through the wall inches from his head. The air inside turned thick with smoke and powder. A man tried the side window. She met him with iron and fire, 2 shots cracking like bones. He fell with no sound but the soft crunch of snow. The fight was not fast. It dragged, pulled like winter hunger. Every bullet spent felt like a memory torn loose. Every scream, outside a tether snapping. The hunter bled from a graze to his thigh. She limped with him, eyes wild but focused. They were not defending a cabin anymore. They were defending each other. Then came the silence again, thicker than before. He stepped outside, breath ragged, rifle heavy. 4 bodies lay still. 3 crawled away with trails of red behind them. 2 others stood, one limping, one holding the last torch. And then the man with the badge. Still untouched, still calm. The hunter raised his rifle. The man didn't flinch. You're good, he said. But you ain't enough. The hunter's voice came low, hoarse. Maybe. He took another step forward. I saw what you did at Wounded Ridge, the man said. You remember that? You don't fool me. You've always been a killer dressed in clean silence. The hunter lowered his rifle just a fraction. I remember. I bet you don't. He didn't look at her, but he felt her behind him, close. Listening. The man raised his own rifle, slowly. Last chance. The hunter breathed deep. No more chances. 2 shots rang out, one his, one hers. The man with the badge staggered, blinked once, then fell like a tree with its roots cut. The snow swallowed the sound. The others ran. None looked back. When the smoke cleared, the pines stood untouched. The wolves emerged, silent and slow, pacing the edge of the trees. They didn't snarl. They didn't bare teeth. They simply watched, golden eyes reflecting the morning. She dropped the rifle. Her hands trembled. He reached out, caught her wrist, held it. Not like a soldier holding a comrade, but like a man holding on to what's left. Later, they burned the bodies. No word spoken, just fire and the smell of finality. By nightfall, the wind had changed. She stood at the edge of the clearing, her shadow stretching long across the snow. The wolves remained, waiting. I have to go, she said. He nodded. They'll come back. More men. More fire. This place will never be safe. His voice was barely there. I know. She looked at him. You can come with me. He shook his head. My ghosts live here. Someone has to remind them they're not alone. She stepped forward, placed her palm on his chest. You were never the worst thing you did. He didn't speak. She turned. The wolves parted for her like she belonged among them. And as she vanished into the trees, he returned to the cabin. The journal lay open on the table. He picked up the pen, blood on his knuckles, and wrote a single line beneath the last drawing. She walked into the forest, and the forest made no sound. That's how I knew she was free. Then he closed the book, and outside in the dark, the pines began to breathe again.